original.
But Maria, tú es bonita.
Matt.
Tú es bonita. You're beautiful.
Yeah, I get it. I'm somewhat familiar with the language.
And I'd like to become familiar with you.
What did you say?
I'm a true admirer of the female form. And I can tell by looking at you that, well, it's clear that you work out. I was thinking maybe we could work out together sometime. You could be like my personal trainer.
Excuse me?
Maria, I hope you won't hold my appreciation for the female form against me. Hey, nothing sinister here. I just wanted to spend some time with you.
You know what? You annoy me. Buzz off and bother someone else. I'm not interested.
Okay, panel, we definitely have several issues that we need to address in these two scenarios. Where do we start?
I'd like to begin with the Satish-Bethany scene. Satish's behavior is clearly sexual, and Bethany has alerted her boss. She's told him to back off. She has clearly communicated this is unwelcomed. I definitely believe this is a hostile environment situation.
I agree, Mary. But what about the issue of Satish not being an employee? He's a supplier.
Oh, that doesn't matter here. The institution is responsible for the conduct of everyone. Now, Bethany's institution may not be able to fire Satish, but they can contact the supplier and say, straighten up your act, or we'll cancel your contract.
Unfortunately, the supervisor has not had adequate training. That might have prevented this situation from getting this far.
That leads us to another issue. The supervisor says it's probably just cultural, and we really should respect other people's cultures. However, is it fair or reasonable to expect an employee to work in an uncomfortable environment?
Oh, that's how we do things in my country is not a legitimate defense.
Mm-hmm.
You're definitely right, Hosea, and I think we're all in agreement that we definitely have a hostile work environment here. Let's switch to the elevator scene and talk for a few minutes about the interchange between Matthew and Maria.
Well, you know, I see this as just climbing the harassment ladder. Maria says, buzz off and go bother somebody else. And there's no doubt about the sexual intent in here. So if he doesn't back off, she really does have a valid complaint.
Matthew may have crossed the line, but the truth is, this type of behavior goes on all the time in the workplace, and oftentimes is welcomed. Life partners do meet at work.
You're right, Hosea. This is an area where both supervisors and employees have to be very careful. Maria said no. No means no, full stop.
I'd just like to chime in here. There is nothing murky about Matthew's approach, whether he chooses at this point to back off or not. His pickup lines and his suggestive expressions have put him at risk for a complaint by Maria.
Generally, one encounter will not rise to the level of an actionable sexual harassment claim. There have been situations, however, where one encounter did constitute sexual harassment. Let's move on to our next scenario where we review a particularly egregious situation.
Brunette on the left. Brunette.
No, I got one.
It's right here.
Oh, whoa! Is that even physically possible?
Man, I hope so.
Wait, is that her shoulder or her knee?
Does it matter? No.
What are you guys laughing at? You guys need to grow up.
I'm sorry, Fatima. We were just doing research on our smooth muscle proposal.
I forgot to read you guys this at lunch. Fatima, you always like a good joke. Why is a beer always a better choice than a woman? A, A beer doesn't get jealous when you grab another beer. B, you can share a beer with your friends. C, a frigid beer is good in bed.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what do we have here? Do we have good fun, or is this sexual harassment?
Well, I suppose one could make the argument that these guys had no idea that Fatima would see the site.
Oh, sure they could. That won't get them off the hook.
Well, according to federal regulations, an action is sexual harassment if it has, and I quote, the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with the individual's work performance. The regulations don't say anything about intent.
Right, Lynn. Legally, the reasonable person standard applies here. If what these guys are doing makes the work environment uncomfortable for a reasonable person, then they've created a hostile work environment.
Mary, you mentioned the reasonable person standard. Does the fact that Fatima is Muslim have any impact whatsoever here?
Well, I believe that if she were to file a sexual harassment claim, Fatima's culture would be taken into consideration. Her headscarf is an obvious sign to a reasonable person that she's Muslim, a culture who finds pornography extremely offensive.
Her religion or her culture has nothing to do with this. A reasonable person working in this country would find such behavior highly offensive.
So all that we're really saying here is that by using the reasonable person standard, we're all agreeing to ensure a professional working environment.
And that's just good common sense, something that these guys clearly lack.
Before we leave this scene, I'd like to point out that I've seen a lot of sexual harassment complaints that are based on exposure to internet porn sites, on emails. All it takes is for someone to be exposed and be offended, and you've got a complaint on your hands.
And most institutions have policies on computer equipment usage that address these issues.
That's exactly right, Maria. It is up to our supervisors and faculty to make sure that this sort of behavior does not happen, and if they observe it happening, to shut it down immediately. It is simply not enough for our institutions to have a policy. Let's move on to our next scene that shows a faculty member and two students.
I want to know why you gave me a C on my test on Wednesday.
Andrew, I like the way that you tied the current immigration debate back to attempts to restrict entrance by the Chinese, Germans, Italians, and the Irish in the 19th and 20th centuries. That was a very nice way of framing the issue.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it. It seemed like a good way to illustrate U.S. policy patterns.
Good call on your part. I have to tell you that I was not as enthralled with your attempts to compare the genocide in Rwanda and Bosnia, and this part about Mexican immigration being similar to the movement of the Pilgrims. What, did you just make all of this up?
I had 2 other exams this week.
Andrew, you've been doing A work all semester, but this exam doesn't merit any more than a C. I'm sorry. I'm sure that if you focus and try harder, you can do better on the final. Now, enough about grades. Are you still gonna spend the night tonight? I hope that a low grade doesn't spoil your usual enthusiasm.
I don't know, my history professor gave me an awful lot of homework.
Oh, very funny.
I'll lighten up. I'll see you around 10 o'clock or so.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot. I have 2 tickets to the season opener on Saturday, and the weather is supposed to be great. Any way I can convince you into trading your books for baseball?
We'll talk about that tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
You'll never guess who I just saw making out. Andrew and Professor Montenegro. I am serious. I saw them. You know, this whole time he wants us to think he's brilliant or something, but he's just getting A's because he's sleeping with the professor. I'm not making this up.
Okay, panel, this is definitely not the type of academic advising that most students receive. What do we think about this scene?
Okay, this appears to be a consensual relationship. I see no evidence of coercion. However, consensual relationships can